Welcome to the very, very first episode of the very, very, very strongest One Piece podcast.
I just got chills.
You guys can't tell, but I'm dancing right now.
I can tell.
All right, I am your captain on this voyage across the Grand Line, Bill, and with me is
Your first mate twice removed, Lewis. and we
And-
also have
We have our cabana boy, the Justin Parentoni. This
your
he's-
Suave boy.
I'm Suave boy.
Suave boy. You're more like the navigator, I'd say.
I'm the navigator. Oh, that's
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. After this episode, being the navigator seems pretty cool.
Navigator J-Bone.
This is our maiden voyage. How about that?
I
About
gotta
that.
ask a question, Bill, because you're the most tenured when it comes to One Piece and One Piece related things. How come Oda only has like there's three images?
Well, before
Okay.
we get into it, we should just say, yeah, so we'll be going over episodes 1 through 8, so the first two arcs of the series. And what are the names of those, Bill?
This is kind of just part of the East Blue Saga. I believe the first arc is called Romance Dawn, and the second arc is, I think it's Orange Town. It goes by so quick that it generally the fan base sort of thinks of it as just part of the East Blue Saga, but it does have a name, and I think it's the Orange Town.
Yeah, that's how I've been kind of looking at chunks to watch.
Yeah, so we will be going over those episodes shortly, but I do want to start off with everyone sort of talking about their full history with One Piece and what One Piece is, not what the One Piece is, but One Piece the series, and just kind of go over kind of the basics before we run down these episodes.
Yeah, what is One Piece, Bill?
So
the-
One Piece is a manga and anime series made by Ichiro Oda, written and illustrated by one person. He has a few assistants that I think help with backgrounds, but this person, he makes this whole series by himself for the most part. This is his I'm going to talk a little bit about Ichiro Oda here. This One Piece is his sort of life's work, and he's been making this series for over 25 years now. I think the first chapter came out July 1997. So he's been publishing it in Shonen Jump, I think this entire time, and that's a weekly production. So he's coming out with a new chapter every week for over 25 years, which, if you know the kind of labor that's put into making a manga, is not just the illustration, but the writing of it is a tremendous, unbelievable feat. I don't know to what extent these things are true, but the legend is that this guy sleeps like 5 hours a night and is just constantly working on One Piece. And the interviews they have with him when they go into his studio, there's just binders and binders full of notes about different upcoming arcs or islands. And so One Piece is a series about, the simple version is that it's a series about a pirate, Monkey D. Luffy, who wants to become the king of the pirates. And how does one do that? They sail the most dangerous ocean in the world, the Grand Line, and they find the treasure of the previous king of the pirates, Gold D. Roger. And the treasure is called the One Piece, because he left his whole treasure at the end of the ocean in one piece. And so, yeah, that's the simple version of what is One Piece. It's the story about Monkey D. Luffy trying to become the king of the pirates. But One Piece encompasses a tremendous amount of subjects, because sort of each island along the Grand Line is its own story, and has its own sort of political, geographic, all of these traits. You can sort of think of each island of One Piece is almost like an entire planet for Star Wars or like a similar series. It has all of its own culture, its own customs. And as we sail along the Grand Line, we meet all these different characters their stories are interwoven with the other characters. And what One Piece does extremely well is builds a world and makes that world feel inhabited and makes that world feel like it's breathing, even when you're not seeing all the characters and all the moving parts. You have this understanding that they are all functioning and the other characters are doing things while off screen, almost to the point where it's almost a meme in the One Piece community about things happening off screen. Like, oh, they got off screened if like a character was defeated in a fight off screen. You know, it's like a almost a running joke. So that's sort of the basics of what One Piece is. Lou, you had a question about why Ichiro Oda has so few photographs of him on the internet.
Yeah.
I
And you
think
said
that's
he's
like
been making it. He's been making One Piece for 25 years. Is that what you said?
5 years. Yeah.
And there's only like 3 images of this man floating around. He's
Yeah.
very secretive. Like, what's going
Yeah,
on?
he doesn't show up in a lot of images. I think he doesn't take a lot of interviews.
He doesn't respond to my emails. This
Yeah.
is
But no, actually he will respond to your emails because in every single volume of the manga, he has the Oda SBS, which is where fans submit questions and he'll pick certain ones to answer.
Oh,
Um,
that's very that's very comic book. That's
yeah,
very old
and
school comic book.
Phil,
That's
have you ever sent him an email?
no, I have not. But apparently he keeps all the fan mail that he gets and he reads most of it and he keeps all the ones that he hasn't read yet to read eventually. I mean, this is like One Piece is his life, you know what I mean? Talking with the fans is and hearing their feedback is important for him. Apparently not being photographed that's not very important for him.
doesn't have time for it, man. It's
Hey, he's too
you
busy
know.
making One Piece. Bill,
Um,
when did you get into One Piece?
And actually I think I'm going to go last because I think I'll probably have the most to say on this front. So, why don't we go with our newbie here, our first time One Piece watcher, Justin.
my experience with the show was through Bill. Um, I think it was probably right after high school or like, sometime during college where he would just always be watching One Piece and he would always tell me he's like, dude, you got to get into it. And when he told me, I don't even know how many episodes were out at the time, but it seemed like an impossible amount even then for me to catch up on.
Yeah, I think for
Yeah,
perspective for the fans, I think at that time it was around 320 episodes and that was, still ongoing at that point.
which right now to me seems like nothing.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, now it seems cute almost compared to what's out there now.
Yeah,
I
But
just
wish
for
they did like
perspective.
over 1,000.
Yeah, we are currently at the latest chapter of One Piece, which I read 2 days ago, is 1014, and the anime is on episode 977.
Damn, they're keeping up. That's good.
Yeah. So sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead, Justin.
no. That's interesting to say. Actually, one of the questions as I had was, I know for animes like Full Metal Alchemist and that manga, the show actually outpaced the manga where they were coming out with new episodes before got ahead of the series, so they had to figure out
That's why they
something
created a
else to do.
different ending for that one. Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess like that will not happen with One Piece as
No.
Oda is manning the helm, as long as his hands still work. But besides that, I watched maybe 20 something episodes of the show, and for one reason or another I just never jumped back on, and it was just one of those things that I don't know if like I think getting back into it was like such a seemed like such a big task.
Monumental task. Yeah.
Yeah, like for something that I I trust Bill, like with the with the stuff. It seemed like such a like a large risk, like to be able to not finish something that like that huge. That probably was the reason that I didn't get back into it. But yeah, Lou, you talk about a little bit where you were,
Actually, I
Yeah.
want to interject just for a brief moment for the first like the listeners. We will talk about what the strategies to sort of get into the series is, or what we recommend for that later, because that's a thing that's sort of common for first time watchers. Is it's not very often that someone says, "Hey, watch this show that I really like. It's 1,000 episodes, and they're not even done. It's not even done yet. It's not complete. It's 1,000 episodes, and it's not done yet. So what could make something like that worth watching? And if it is worth watching, what is sort of the way to go about doing that? So we'll cover that probably after these intros. And so I'll stop interrupting now. I just wanted to let that be known. That's
Well,
the thing that
we all know the real answer to that is they need to download the podcast.
Step one, subscribe to the
Step
podcast
two,
so you can take the
join
voice.
the cruise.
Yeah, that's the way to do it. If you want to do it that way, that's the way to
Do it right. Do it with the podcast. With the very, very, very strongest.
I think that's what makes Bill our captain too, is like the common denominator for Justin and I on why we, I think, got into One Piece was in high school, like Bill, huge fan of One Piece and like talked about it all the time. But I think the thing that really like propelled it a little bit more forward with me to start like watching it when I did, to start to my dad's from he's from Italy, but he's off the boat and lived in New Jersey. He's got like this hard accent. Doesn't even really know what anime is. This one day we like ended up in a library parking lot because I needed to go rent a book. And I see Bill standing there dressed as Sanji. I didn't even know who Sanji was at the time, but Bill's standing there in like a blue suit, blonde
That's
wig.
really
He's got like
eyebrow.
fucking cigarette hanging out his mouth, and my dad's just like, "Are you like a Broadway guy or something? Like, what's going on with the get up?" And like just to like preface like how like much love Bill has had for the show, even seeing him dressed up like Sanji. But it was always like a topic of conversation, and it was probably 8, maybe maybe like 10 years ago. I
10 years ago.
started watching One Piece, and I didn't get too far into it. I did enjoy it. I ended up getting to like episode like 25 or somewhere around there during like the Usopp arc. And yeah, I guess like life got in the way. It just took a hiatus from it. And just a couple months ago I started watching One Piece again. I was like, "You know what? I'm going to give it a go." I feel like I didn't do it justice. And that was probably like 2 months ago, and now I'm at episode like 256. I've just been binge watching the hell out of it. Super entertaining, been laughing nonstop, been crying a little bit too to this show. And they fly by. The episodes are relatively quick too, and it's definitely not what I expected either. How do you sell somebody on like 1,000 episode show that's not even done yet? You know, and then I got into it and like they're pretty quick. Like if you skip like the intros to it and like the recaps, you're dealing with like a 15-minute episode per episode.
Did you have
Speaking
anything
of which,
you wanted to go on that or?
speaking of
No,
which,
yeah.
Bill, this is
Speaking of
Captain
which,
Bill.
All right, so let's get into it. So One Piece. I have been a anime fan for, probably since I was probably like 11 years old and I first saw Dragon Ball Z, when maybe, I mean, you can consider earlier than that, probably around 9 years old when I started getting into Pokemon. And, it's this sort of like,
I think that's the entry.
Dragon
Yeah, that's
Ball
the,
to whatever pipeline you want to
yeah,
call
it's
it.
the entryway, the Toonami
Yeah,
entryway for most
exactly. The Toonami
people our
pipeline.
age.
Yeah, for me it was, I started with Pokemon and Dragon Ball was something that came on after Pokemon that I mostly ignored until my friends wouldn't shut up about it. And then I got into Dragon Ball Z. And Dragon Ball Z still to this day is huge for me. I love Dragon Ball Z. And in middle school, it was like every night Dragon Ball Z, Cowboy Bebop, yeah, Yu Yu Hakusho, all these series that are on Toonami. And then during high school, it mostly became skateboarding, and that was all I was doing was skateboarding. Most of my other sort of interests fell away just to only skateboarding.
And
And
my interest was watching Bill skateboard.
yeah,
yeah.
And that was what I was really into in high school.
so probably around 18 or 19, I started just getting back into anime again, and that started with a rewatch of Dragon Ball, Dragon Ball Z, Dragon Ball GT, then Yu Yu Hakusho, Trigun, Cowboy Bebop, all of these series, all the like essentials, right? But I remember at that time, Toonami was showing One Piece with the English dub around that time. And I turned it on. I was like, oh, like Toonami. This is like what got me on One Piece. So like, what's this new thing? They gotta have good new stuff. And I watched like 10 minutes of this One Piece in English dub, and I was like, who is this like corny looking character with like the goofy hat and like these do not look like impressive anime characters. The guy's got on like a button up shirt with no sleeves and like
He's got
you
no
know
Goku chest. He's got
no,
no.
he doesn't have the traps, he doesn't
Don't
have the
be
belt,
hating
he
on
doesn't
his
have the swag,
swag.
so
He's out on sea all day, man.
No, just
but
I'm just
I was just
reinforcing what Bill is saying.
yeah, I was very underwhelmed. And to the point where I can remember before turning it off, I was like, this is me again. This is per perspective. We are now starting a One Piece podcast. We're going to go the entire series. This is my favorite series of all time. Watching this for like seeing this English dub for like 10 minutes, as I turned it off, I literally said out loud, I can't believe this is the shit they're showing on Toonami now. I can't like I had like a boomer moment of like, this is what kids think anime is now. This is such garbage. They should show more Dragon Ball Z and then maybe kids would get into anime. Like I was like literally this is like a disservice to anime. Well, that was my impression first time ever seeing One Piece. But I kept going on with anime and eventually this is when I still lived in Florida. I started going to anime conventions. It was like, oh, like one of my friends was like, hey, they have an anime convention coming up. We should go. So we went and, we dressed up like, we did a little dress up as characters, some like, mild cosplaying. I went as Trunks, made like the jacket and everything. I had the sword. It was super fun.
When did you
And
fucking make that? Do we have pictures of that?
Yeah,
um,
I've never seen you as Trunks.
you know what? That photo is, I didn't have the hair for it, but I had like the whole outfit. And that photo is lost in time. Maybe Coral or Monica have it because that's who I went with. But that photo, it was on like a photo bucket account that is now deleted. So not by my own doing,
It's
but
probably for the best. I mean, Justin and I have to live with cosplays of Batman and the Joker.
so
Call them cosplays. That's
but yeah. So I went to this first anime convention and it was super fun. I was like just getting into Naruto at the time, and there was a bunch of Naruto cosplayers. It was super fun. And so I kept going to a few more, and everyone was dressed as the One Piece characters. All the merch was One Piece merch. Like you couldn't get away from this series. It was like this was the series. And it kind of like, softened me up a little bit. I was like, all right, well, I saw it for like 10 minutes and thought it was stupid, but like these people love all the same shit that I like. So they can't all be stupid. Like there's got to be something to this. Like, and if I just give it a try, maybe I'll understand. Like maybe I won't love it the way they love it, but maybe I'll understand. And so, I did what you do. You go to the anime streaming, page and you look at it and it's 300 episodes and you're like, okay, episode 1. And this
And
is
I
this is
think
the thing that I think fits in with your stories of like watch like the first, few arcs, and I was enjoying it but not like blown away. I was not like amazed, but I was like this is fun and the humor keeps it going, and it has sort of this edge to it in certain areas, and there's something to it.
that has such a unique voice.
Well,
Absolutely.
too, like if you watch it dubbed, it actually has a unique voice too.
Yeah. This is so actually I'm gonna give my big recommendation. You need to watch the series with the original Japanese voice actors in subs. I'm gonna lay that out right now. So anyway, to get kind of back to it, the first, 25-ish episodes, I was like, this has got something going for it, but it's not like I'm not floored.
You didn't get what the huge thing was when you went to the convention. Not yet, at
Exactly.
least.
But then I got to the Arlong Park arc, which is like around episode 30. And at that point, I was like, I get it. Holy shit. Holy shit. And we'll get to that obviously within this series. And I think Luke can also vouch for this, that you have sort of this colorful group of characters that you're with up until that point. And you know, that arc is when Oda really shows that he can write a story that just really hits you.
He's got range. He showcases he's got range
Yeah,
for
and
sure.
and that all of these little threads build up to different payoffs. And I think Arlong Park is when you really get like the first taste of like how he can write a payoff, and we'll get to sort of what I think that is at that time. But I can remember like when I was watching the Arlong Park arc, I wasn't feeling that well one day, and I was like, oh, I should go into work and let them just send me home if I'm not feeling that well. But that day I was like, no, I'm gonna finish. I'm gonna stay home. I'm gonna not go into work, and I'm gonna finish Arlong Park. And that was the best decision ever. And kept going from there. And honestly, like it's just Oda just writes one banger after the next from there on. And I think it was, I think the exact episode is 192 or 193. By the end of that episode, I was just full ugly crying, and I had decided, no, this is the best. This is the best series of
Would
all
you call it
time.
the very,
There is
very,
no
very?
other story that's made me feel this way. There's no other story like there's no. It's hard to say because I honestly don't think it's the best. I don't think that that episode is the best showcase of Oda's writing, but it is when like I understood that like this person, whatever he wrote from here on, it I trust it. I vouch for it. I don't care what it is. I know it will be this good. Like, and it was at that point that I was like, this is my favorite work of fiction ever. And this is probably when I started espouting this to Justin and Lou
Yeah,
every
which was
day. Whenever,
crazy to hear come out of your mouth because, like, I mean, this is coming from the guy who loves Space Jam, The Matrix, one of his favorite movies of all time.
true, I love
And
him.
he's like, you got to see this anime, man. It's One Piece. And it hasn't stopped since. He still talks about it. I'm watching it currently, and he's still like, dude, you got to watch One Piece.
Not honestly, you're gonna think I'm overstating it here, but One Piece isn't just my favorite series. It's one of my favorite things about being alive at this moment in history. I legitimately like. I know it sounds crazy, but and maybe the listeners once we get further into the series, maybe it won't be the series for you, but it's I one of the reasons that I'm grateful to be alive is that One Piece exists, and this isn't just about like what I saw up until episode 192. This is like everything since then. Still, I still read week to week. I still go back and again, this is probably like my sixth or seventh rewatch at this point, and I can watch an arc and then I can rewatch it again and still like be excited about it. And I'll go through and I'll rewatch just clips all the time. Like the amount of time that some people would spend watching their favorite series, I've spent that listening to people talk about my favorite series, like watching people on YouTube or listening to podcasts where people talk about One Piece. Just because there's so much content and there's so much to appreciate, and it all fits together, and there's things that you can start to understand about what can happen in the future by understanding how things fit together up into that point that you're at. I guess I'm gonna let it go there because I could keep this rant up going for the next 4 episodes of the podcast, but I'll spare you.
1,000 episodes that you can talk on.
Yeah, because I have a tremendous amount of love for this series. My closest friends, they it's funny when I have my closest friends together because when I start talking about One Piece, they'll look at each other and I know that they know we're getting into the One Piece mode. But luckily, I have friends that appreciate this. I'm very grateful for the friends I have who tolerate the One Piece talks, and they kind of know when to get into it and when not to get into it. Like, okay, now we're at the time when we're hanging out that we can let Bill go on a One Piece rant for a little bit.
So like at this point, I guess like you're describing it like it's more of like a way of life for you, which is crazy that like you keep telling people to watch it dubbed. Like I don't know why you would do that.
All right, so this is when I will get into the how does one get into One Piece?
Besides
And
just
the
listening to the
number one
podcast and just following with us.
Yeah, the number one. Okay, actually, the first rule of One Piece is you listen to the very, very strongest One Piece podcast. The second rule of One Piece, you listen to the very, very, very strongest One Piece podcast. But after that, the next rule is you watch it with the original audio and subs. And you know what? Maybe you like dubs. There's plenty of animes where it's great to watch it in the dub. One Piece is not one of them. Sorry to say, if you're one of the, Funimation voice actors listening to this, I appreciate the work you do for the people who refuse to watch it in subs, but those Japanese voice actors, they do it right. The subs are great. That's the way you want to do it. And you know what? If you don't like reading subtitles, grow up. Just grow up. That's all I'm
And
gonna say.
actually, what I'll say about that, I mean, when you first recommended the show to me and Lewis, there wasn't even official subs. What should, like, and you said there are actually two,
Yeah.
and because people, like you said, that fans
And subs,
actually
yeah.
subbed it. Yeah. I find that very interesting.
Imagine, okay, a labor of love, going through and okay, so actually I want to just touch on my appreciation for this. The ones I recommended it to you were the Kaizokuo fan subs. And the Kaizokuo fan subs to this day I think were the best subs of One Piece. They don't make them anymore, but what a labor of love, because not only did they go through and translate the series and, not only just translate it, but applied the text to each episode. We're talking like over 300 episodes at that point. And they did it week to week, but they would also, again, not just translate it, but they would also purposefully not translate certain words, and they would include a way for you to understand what it meant and why it's better not translated. If there was like a word pun that Ichiro Oda was making with the Japanese language that doesn't translate to English, they would include an asterisk for that. And you could pause it and you could better understand
That's pretty
sort of
awesome.
the fun that was being made. Amazing. Not
Yeah.
only that, but they would animate some of the subtitles. So when Luffy does Gomu Gomu no and he does his attack, there would be like a rubbery animated text. It wouldn't be just like a flat text.
That's what that's what I remembered. That's what I remember that I didn't see this time. I was like, "Where's that dope that dope text that
Yeah.
came up every time
And
he
that
does a cool
rubber
move?"
text, labor of love. Unbelievable. Amazing. And that's part of where so
Something
yeah,
I want to talk about too is like to even say a labor of love kind of feels like an understatement. Like we're old. When we were in high school, there wasn't like YouTube or streaming services. So like for these people, these fans of the show to not only animate their own text over these animation styles, but like host a site, host a way to stream
yeah,
these to
absolutely.
watch is crazy. Like
Amazing.
it's crazy amount of love put
Amazing.
into that.
I also want to just before we jump on to anything else, so for the first time viewer, as we said, strong recommendation for the subs. You got to go with the subs. Also, and this is sort of how we're going to break it down. One Piece, if you look at it as I'm not going to understand the story until I get to the current episode, that's not really the way to think about this series. I think the way to think about One Piece is how it breaks up into arcs, because the way the story is told is through individual story arcs, and there's an overarching story that's being told, and there's an arc by arc story that's being told, and you can think of it the same way when you read Harry Potter, you don't feel like I need to read all 7 books at once. You can read book 1 and take a break and then come back to book 2. Like you don't read all the Harry Potter books sequentially unless you're like specifically doing that. And no one feels that they need to do that because it's understood that there's a story arc in Harry Potter and book 1 is arc 1, right? Similarly in One Piece, each island is sort of its own arc. And you can treat each one, when I watched it for the first time, I didn't watch it all sequentially and just like, oh, I watched 1 to 330 episodes and then I was done. I would watch to like episode, 30 and then take a little break and do something, watch something else, and then watch to episode 50. But then you get to a rhythm where you're like, actually, the only thing I want to watch is One Piece. But, and, it's also much easier just to like, on your lunch break, just cruise through a couple chapters of the manga because the manga is only about 20 pages per chapter, and 20 pages of manga go by really quick.
They go by super fast. But
So you could read like 25 years worth of work in like 2 weeks. You should be good.
No, really. I mean, you can catch up to it easily in just a couple months, and that's not even like that's without like going crazy binging it. But there will be times when you're like, I can't stop at this episode. I can't stop at this chapter. Like I have to read the next one.
Yeah,
So
four more.
yeah, I think, and also this is also an important thing. And there's a YouTuber, Super Eye Patch Wolf, that says this, and so I want to let it know that it's Super Eye Patch Wolf's quote and not my own because I think this is really brilliant. That he said that these long-running anime series, be it Naruto, Yu Yu Hakusho, One Piece, whatever, these are not just the kind of shows that you watch and then are done with. These are the kind of shows that they become sort of a part of your life for a while. And there's a comfort in, a long running show being a consistent part of your sort of routine, in a sort of like the background as like a part of the timeline of your life. And there are certain times when like I legitimately think of like a part of my life and I think about what One Piece, like what was the current arc of One Piece at that time. Like these are series that like, they live along with you for a while. And anyone who grew up watching Dragon Ball Z knows what I'm talking about. Anyone who grew up watching like Yu Yu Hakusho or like a really long series, not something, obviously some of us grew up watching Cowboy Bebop as well, but that's a short series, right? But for these long running things, these are sort of things you live with. They become part of your routine and something that you live with, which I think One Piece lends itself specifically to because One Piece, as you move along with these characters, they sort of become like a family that you care about,
And you
and
grow with them.
yeah, you feel like you're part of the crew in a way, and that's part of why, when tragedy strikes with these characters, uh, it hits a lot harder than other series that I've watched or consumed. And again, that's something that we'll cover more later as things unfold. But um,
Let's start getting into later. Let's jump in. Like, that's you're getting me all
now,
hype now,
baby,
Bill.
later
Let's
is now.
it's yeah, let's later is
Episode
now.
one,
True, man.
episode one, One Piece, wealth, fame, power. Goldie
This
Roger had it all, baby.
he did. So the intro, right? Like I'll say that what a good intro, like to what the intro to the world is.
Exactly.
This is the world. Like, Goldie Rogers executed, go find my treasure, like, and the great what is it? What do they call it? The
Great Age
Great
of
Pirate
Pirates.
Age.
Yep.
All of a sudden you're like, okay, this is where you are right now. Like,
Like a short story to give you like an opening to the era, and then like the actual intro to One Piece is like such a banger. And like it shows you like all of like it gets you hyped up on each character you haven't even encountered yet that you'll soon get to. Not to mention like the big bads to some of these like soon to be arcs you're gonna get into. And yeah, just so much hype.
I would love to see, like, some more on Goldie Rogers, and like no spoilers or anything if we do get a lot more, like, a lot more of him, or oh, he's not dead, like, that's
Yeah.
yeah,
So I won't say anything beyond when you hear the name Goldie Roger in the series, regardless of anything that's happening, like when you hear the name Goldie Roger, you get really still for a second. You're like, oh shit.
it's
Like
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 Voldemort.
yeah, exactly. It like not at that level of like evil or anything. It's like it's not
Yeah,
Goldie Roger's not an evil character by any stretch of the imagination, but when you hear the name, you're like, like
listen,
like
like other
like
people,
we're
like
talking
if
about
like
serious shit right now. Like
exactly, if you were at a bar and you heard somebody mention the name, you'd be like listening into that conversation.
yeah,
You'd
Well,
be
first
like,
of all, Bill would be super
yeah,
hyped.
no, I would be in that conversation. There's not
so
there's
Bill
not
would be the one instigating the conversation. If you
Goldie
did that.
Roger. All right, all right.
Oh, sweet. You guys got an hour?
You mean Goldie Rogers?
So yeah, so we get right into it, and the anime does an interesting trick, and I'll talk about. The manga actually starts with a different episode, and I'll talk about that once we get to where the manga starts, and I'll talk about the differences between the manga and the anime, which they're not tremendously different, but I can kind of explain why I think they went with a different choice for the first episode of the anime versus the manga. And it's funny because watching this for the like, for like the seventh time or whatever, I'm like, in a lot of other anime, Kobe would be the main character. He's like the downtrodden, like
He has
kind of
Trunks hair.
nerdy guy, like, you know, you could see how like, oh, maybe he has an ambition that like, and he's going to be the main character and he's going to like get himself out of this scenario. And another thing I want to highlight is you can kind of see the Disney influence on Oda with Alvida, and like her whole shtick is who's the most beautiful of them all, right? That's sort of like a Disney villain, like who's the fairest of them all, right? Yeah, so you get this introduction to Alvida, very like kind of Disney-esque villain. Colby, very like sort of
Very,
shonen first,
uh,
like main character kind of
uh,
character. And then who's the main character? This goofy guy that pops out of a barrel and like punches two pirates in the face. It's such a goofy way to introduce your main character for especially for a series that's going to be as huge as this is, not only in terms of the length of the series, but just in terms of like the global phenomenon that is One Piece. Is just like, yeah, he just pops out of a barrel, I guess.
what's jumping on what you said there, Bill? It's very interesting, like, because it's not even he's not the first like named character, right? So he's not Alvida, right? They're taking over pirate ships. It's not Alvida. It's not Kobe. It's not.
I didn't see Nami
Do we
before.
see Nadi before we see Monkey D. Luffy, or do we
Yeah,
see her after?
Nami first. Yeah,
So
she's not a named character at that point, but yeah.
exactly. So you see, and you're like, oh, maybe she's the main character. Like, she could have been the main character
Yeah,
in another.
highlight her. It's yeah, it's not an
Yeah,
unreasonable
they
expectation.
and like with so many different, like you said, so many different characters. It's he's number 4, almost like 4 or 5 out the gate of
Yeah.
like main. And I would have told you that when I first watched the show, I did not know he was the main character until probably the end of the episode. Like, because there was so much other stuff going on, and you're like, so is it him? Like, there's a story going on here, but I'm like, who's who's this? So he's the guy.
The guy
He's
who
the
was
guy.
sleeping in a barrel?
But yeah, that's I agree.
It also sort of begins I never thought of it this way until this watch through, but it sort of begins a gag, and Lou, you'll know what I'm talking about a little bit here. This kind of ongoing gag of Luffy always getting stuck places. Like literally his introduction is he was like stuck in a barrel. Like
For
um
being a rubber person too, like being able to stretch. You think there are not many places you can get stuck.
Yeah. Yeah, it does end up becoming a running joke.
well, I'll mention the gags sort of start right away with Luffy as he hits the pirates and then they're mad at him and he's sort of like, what are they mad about? Like he's already
Yeah.
showing like how sort of aloof he is as a character and how like he sort of just like does his own thing and like he beats up these pirates and Kobe's like freaking out and he's like, okay, now where's the food? Like he's not at all interested that like he got into this fight. He's not like, well, what's that? He doesn't even care what their motivations were for fighting him. He's like, yeah, I want food now, so take me to the
See,
pantry.
that's the thing that kind of strikes me with Luffy of like drunken monkey style, which is even funnier that it's Luffy. They do this thing and it's so quick where him coming out of the barrel and like hitting the guys, it's like this funny moment, and then like Kobe asks him who he is, and like you get the dramatic eye light and he gives him the answer and then snaps right back into like his goofy like where's the food, indicates that he's not maybe a total like fool that he portrays himself to be.
Part of the discussion today, like it's a nice reflection on him, and you'd see how he'd look up to somebody like Shanks, who is very much almost in a similar vein of he doesn't need to. Luffy
Yeah,
knows he's strong.
Yeah, that's fair.
He does not he does not need to like strut. He is strong. He knows he's strong, but he's not gonna like make a big deal about it. It's almost like a side like thing he says where he says, I'm gonna go get the One Piece. I'm gonna be the king of
well,
pirates.
I think more so than him making any kind of like bragging statement when he says he's going to become the king of the pirates. It's just like a firm statement of his ambition. Because that's one of his big lines throughout the series, Kaizoku Orowaru ni naru, like I'm going to become the king of the pirates. And when he says that, it's it's funny because there's so many different ways that he says it throughout the series. There are times when he says that, and that's sort of like a declaration of like, now is when I kick your ass because you're my rival in this moment, and I'm not like, and you're not on that level, and so like I'm like it's a statement of like my strength when it in a certain time, but not generally. It's more like this is my ambition and this is what I'm going for, and like you said, he doesn't really need to state how strong he is or like talk about any of his exploits, and he never does because not that he's not proud of some of those things, and that's something that'll come up later. But yeah, he doesn't need to overstate it. And I also just want to highlight this one gag that I love. One of my first favorite Luffy lines is when he's with Kobe in the pantry, and Kobe's explaining how he got stuck on the ship. And Luffy's like, "Oh, so you're a coward. I hate people like you." Like
Yeah.
any other shonen protagonist would be, "I'm gonna save you." Like I'm gonna like, "Oh, that's you're being oppressed. I'll
Yeah,
save
you have
you."
that's a bad go, man.
Yeah,
That's like, it's
But yeah,
yeah.
Luffy
It's
like
like,
dug
"Oh, so
into
you're
like
a coward. I can't stand up for yourself."
he goes in like Dr. Phil, you're ugly, you're stupid, I'm gonna kill you. Give me $500.
he says, yeah, you're a coward. I hate people like you. But it's not. It's almost. He's like, I'll still be your friend though, man. It's
Yeah,
not like,
he says it like a joke. He's not like mean to Kobe after that. He's like says it like a joke.
it's a declaration, but like just a statement of what it's a matter of fact statement. That's what I should have said before. Is
Yeah,
that when he says these things, he says them in such a matter of fact statement, and other characters refer to it when Luffy says, "I'm going to be like the king of the pirates." Sometimes he says it like almost passingly, and they're like, that's a big deal to say something like that, and you're not the person that like I need to convince. I'm letting you know because you asked.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, that's
yeah. That's a good way to talk about it. Yeah.
little taste. The episode one being its own almost mini arc is pretty good at explaining that.
Yeah, and so yeah, from there we move on to the island where Zoro's being held, and I
Well, let's talk a little bit about the
you
fight
talking
with
about the fight against Alvida. Sure.
yeah, so the fight against Alvida. It's like, where you first get to see Luffy, his devil fruit powers, and the rubber fruit. And every time I see a new fruit, like the new devil fruit, I'm like, oh, it's the rubber fruit. I was like, well, that's not. It always seems strange whenever they bring another one of those things up. Yeah, no, the fight against Alvida I thought was awesome, where you see why Luffy is so confident in himself. The chunky lady, I like to use the word chunky.
But also, I think one of the things it does really well, without overstating it, is show, and this is an important thing important characteristic about Luffy, is that he can stretch, but he can also take impact damage without any sort of repercussion. Because he takes that iron club to the head, and he like no sells it. There's no damage done to him, and that's one of the important features of the rubber fruit or the Gomu Gomu no Mi is that not only can he stretch, but he's also not taking impact damage.
Yeah, they play with that a lot, where like, what does that mean? And because it's like, you absorb it, you don't like, you don't take it. It doesn't your body doesn't take it. You
Yeah.
absorb the impact, and then it bounces off. It literally bounces off of you almost.
Everything like leading up to that too, like all the crewmates just like, you don't want to get bunked. Like just like how scary she could be. And he just kind of takes it to the face like a piece of chewing gum.
Yeah.
Yeah. First episode, really great. Do we want to talk about Kobe in the first episode?
Yeah, we talked about him briefly that he kind of has almost like the makings of a main character. We get his ambition is that he wants to be in the Navy.
So the opposite of Luffy's ambition almost.
Yeah.
But he's
Yeah,
still cool with him.
but a
Yeah.
good heart. Yeah.
Which I think establishes in general that there's can be an interesting like not black and white sort of understanding between the Navy and pirates, even though they're on the surface sort of rivals. And I think that takes us into the episodes with Zoro because he's being held by by the Navy members who Colby at first he's like, "Oh, this is where I should try to join here." But then when he sees how horrible the members of the Navy are there, he finds it like despicable. And so they're already kind of playing with like how there can be people that want to kind of be on the same team but have different ideas of what justice is and what morality is among those sort of factions.
They do that. They like, they flip the script on you maybe like 4 or 5 different times with like expectations of like, different like, of what everybody's roles are. And I would say like, I think the Zoro pieces are like one of, I guess even the stuff with Monkey D. Luffy, I think a lot of the main characters, pacifism is a very strong trait with all of them, where fighting is not the first answer to like almost anything. It's something that's put on them. The circumstances like, come to the point where they have to fight.
Mhm.
Luffy has to fight because this happened. Zoro is, instead of like, slicing up all those guys in like the bar, he's like, sure, I'll just hang me in a dry. I can wait 30 days. Like, it's not a big deal. And then I'll be on my way. Like, that's the price. I'll pay that price. So, like, killing everybody isn't necessarily the goal where it would be in something else.
Yeah, this is not Dragon Ball Z where the characters can't wait to fight each other. Like,
Yeah. But at the
Yeah.
same time, can we talk about Zoro's portrayal the first time you see him? Because like
Like
you've
Jesus.
you've got like this whole first episode where like you've got your main character who's busting out of a barrel. You've got like these comedic jokes and these like characters with like charisma and these outfits and like everything's really like over the top. And then you get introduced to Zoro, who's just like kind of tied up to this post, head down, shadow over his eyes, and you get like a Quentin Tarantino guitar riff that's just like, damn it.
Yeah, no, I actually
You're
had
like,
that written
oh,
down in my notes. That fucking guitar riff is pretty
so
boss.
good.
yeah,
Well, like that's when you know you're like, oh shit, this guy's gonna be like, he's
That
gonna be
guy's cool.
trouble.
but
Yeah.
the other thing is once you sort of understand that there's like Zoro's not just a full on like psychopath. Once it's sort of established and you're slightly endeared to him when he wants to eat the girl's crappy rice balls that have like sugar in them, even though they get stomped on in the dirt.
I think it's
This is
some
this is
what's his name?
Helm
Helm
Epo steps on them.
the
Meppo, yeah.
equivalent, the equivalent of my dad's a lawyer.
Well, yeah, well, also I have written down here that Oda is so good at like making a hateable character. Like the same way he's good at writing a character that you have like endearment towards, like he can equally write a character that you're just like, "Oh, fucking get this guy." Like just fucking get him. Like
I mean,
get him. Like
Like,
someone
and
just get him.
immediately
Like
too. Like
yeah, I mean,
immediately.
the
yeah, and
illustration of him, he like even looks like a dickhead.
yeah,
Like,
he doesn't. This is also one of the things that I love about One Piece is you could almost do like a Who's That Pokemon with any character because their silhouettes are all so unique. Like the design for each character is so unique, and Helmeppo right away is just this like you look at them like if you like put all the characters shown thus far in a lineup and you're like, which one of them am I gonna hate the most? You could just point directly at Helmeppo and be like, fuck that guy. Like, like what I was gonna say about Zoro is this is another character once you realize is not a full-on psychopath is like who would be the main character in another series, like he's also another like main character material kind of character. Like he's badass, he's got these swords, he's got like
He's Romy Kenshin, yeah. That's and like in another series he'd be something like that.
yeah, he'd be like the wandering samurai, like
Mhm.
He's kind of like his own like kind of badass power fantasy character. And one of the things I love is like there are times in the future where people will mistake Zoro as the captain of the Straw Hats because he's so powerful or he's so strong. And like he must be the captain.
He's
But
even in the arc, it's like people are going after Zoro for the fame and not like Luffy, where they're like, oh, that's Zoro. I'm gonna go like, for glory or whatever. I'm gonna bring you his head and be like, no, you gotta watch out for fucking Luffy, man. He's
Yeah.
he's the guy.
Yeah, and of course I love the way they play off of each other here. I love the moment where Luffy goes to get the swords and he's just dragging Helmeppo around like
Yeah.
and he's like, "Well, which one is it?" when he gets there and he's like, "I don't know." So he bursts out with all three swords. And you have to love the moment when he gets down and you get the first reveal like, "Which of the swords is yours?" and he's like, "All of them." And you get the first moment of Zoro with the sword in the mouth, which is just it's so over the top and crazy and like it's like one of those like things that like I think not only shows you how unique One Piece is because there's like not really another series where there's a character with this like the swordsman who uses the sword in their mouth, but also it gives you an established idea of like how off the wall this world can be, where that's like a thing that can be realistic within this world that someone can swing a sword with their face and their mouth and like that they can clench it in their teeth and like do a powerful sword strike that like gives you an idea of like how these characters sort of how kind of cartoony sort of like some of the powers can be and how their strength can be.
And when you set the stakes like in the beginning of the show with Luffy having like, these rubber powers, swords don't seem that like awesome, like, like when you next to it. But the way Zoro it comes out is like, okay, Luffy, like, and you think pirates, you think swords, like, like you
Yeah,
think,
like a
yeah,
cutlass.
yeah,
Yeah.
cutlass. But then when you see Zoro, it's like, no, he's not like a swordsman. He's like a fucking crazy swordsman. Like he
He is
is
the
like,
swordsman.
so he's the guy. He's that guy.
Yeah, I mean, if you can think of it even just like, and maybe this is like, maybe Ichiro Oda thought about this when he was writing this character, is like, you have this character with these sort of otherworldly powers to be a rubber man, um, and how do you not have him totally outshine the rest of the crew? Like, yeah, if you
Mhm.
want to have a swordsman character because you like swordsmen, like, if you just put like a regular ass swordsman, like sure they could be a cool character, but like what sets them over the top? And of course he comes up with a way and like the,
Mhm.
the three sword style.
Yeah. Other things I wanted to talk about was, uh, so Helmeppo? What's his what's his rank in the military? Where he definitely says a lot that his dad is is a captain, but I don't know what his rank is.
It's
He
probably
I,
fucking
unranked.
that's it. Yeah,
Unranked.
because like even Captain Morgan says to him like, "You're a disgrace to me."
Yeah, you're nobody.
Yeah, which I mean that's a little harsh coming from a guy with a metal jaw. I was pretty upset he didn't say Jossum once, but
Well,
yeah.
actually, this is the thing that I want to say to both of you and any of the listeners, and even some of the longer time fans might not have caught this, but you'll find out in the future how why Captain Morgan not only has his position, but why he has the metal jaw. And this is something that I didn't catch on my first like two watch throughs. So I'll bring it up when we get to that point. But it's not too far away, and it's one of those things where, and this is part of why I think One Piece is so interesting to rewatch, and you catch these little things that are like there's kind of so much density with One Piece, and it's always easy to pick up what the main points are, but there's these subtle points and these like subtle like understandings of characterization that you can get from a rewatch where you're like, oh, actually this, or if you're watching really closely, you can get like, oh, actually, he showed us this, but without overstating it, and now I understand the background of this certain character. So that's something to be on the lookout with even these next few episodes, actually, after episode 8, the next set of episodes that we'll watch, I think you can see a little bit of Captain Morgan's backstory, but it's not heavily stated, so it's something to look out for. Not that Axehand Morgan is the most interesting character, but it's definitely something like, an extra little bit of like Oda characterization.
no, it's he is a very interesting character just by himself. Like, it's again with the two other episodes, like after episode 1 being its like its own like almost introduction to the show, and kind of episode 2 and 3 being tagged onto it like as its own like mini arc. It's you have a town, you have a whole new crewmate, you have not only a bad guy, but the bad guy's dad, who's even more powerful than the bad guy. And you have again, and then you have Naughty again hanging out, like, getting another sneak peek of what she's been up to.
Yeah,
And
Nami just in the background
Nami,
being a
yeah.
sneak thief.
When we talked about before that the episodes are short, they're like 15 minutes of actual story. He gets all of that in there in 2 episodes with flashbacks. There's flashbacks to other things that happened.
Yeah, you get the hint of that Zoro has someone that he's promised something, made a promise to,
Mhm.
which we'll definitely get more on that later. Also, I think one of the things one of the things I really appreciate about it, One Piece, and this will come more into play in later arcs, but that you kind of understand the geography of the area too. Like you kind of understand where the base is in reference to the town and where the port is in reference to the town. And I think one of the things that Oda does extremely well, not just with his overall world, but with the individual islands, is show like there's a definite understanding of the geography of each of these places.
No, yeah, it. I know what you're saying there. Like it's about the town, and then the base is, I guess, like uphill, wherever, like, whatever you want to call it. Like enough that Captain Morgan wouldn't know exactly what's going on down there.
Mm-hmm.
He would need somebody to report to him. It's very interesting.
They also do a little bit more talking about the devil fruits here, and I just want to highlight that they specifically mention the power to cause tsunamis and the ability to breathe fire.
Okay, so
Just,
we
just,
know that
Just
those
hold
are
on to that.
just a
there's
thing to note.
Like,
so those are 2 other devil fruit powers that I should be aware of in the future. That's
Yeah.
okay.
And this
So,
is sort of the thing is,
but they all have the same weakness, right? Like, or same thing where you can't swim
where
if
you
you've
can't
eaten them,
yeah,
swim,
like
right?
the sea
exactly.
will
You
take it
can't
from
swim.
you. Yeah.
So this is like a thing that's another thing that's interesting about the rewatch is you can always pick up on these things that like, oh, he had an idea for this early on, or maybe he fully had this character X, Y, and Z character written at this point in the series. And that's one of the things that doing a rewatch you can always like pick up on, like, oh, like, did he just say this because like this is a thing that he wanted to do? Or did he already know the entire, like, it's just, it can be kind of baffling, especially when so many other longer running series trip over their own narratives and their own lore. And you're like, oh, Oda just knew his whole shit from the very beginning. Like he knew like what he was gonna do with all these things. So
Or
uh,
he laid up enough groundwork and
and didn't forget
enough
it.
things, yeah, to not
Yeah.
make those mistakes.
Well,
That
something that popped up when Bill and I were watching these first 8 episodes was when Luffy asks Zoro to join his crew, because they make an arrangement, and Zoro says something to Luffy that
Oh, I have
now
it written down here actually.
now knowing that like stuff like this can happen with Oda in his writing, like hearing this line, I was kind of like, I'm kind of scared for the future of their
Yeah,
friendship.
me too, actually. I was like, oh man, I forgot about this line. Zoro says, if I have to give up my ambition for any reason, you'll need to apologize to me. And it's just like, oh, like what does that mean? Oh, like that's like not something that I've thought about, in a long time. Like him, like or maybe ever thought about, but like, does that foreshadow something that happens with Zoro, or that will happen that has not happened yet? I also just love that Zoro is like on board sort of right away with calling Luffy captain. Like
well,
Zoro,
he did he did have to get a little bit of convincing. Like,
well, basically during the course of that first fight that they have against Captain Morgan's crew, at the end of that fight, he calls Luffy captain, and I think that's like a fun characterization for Zoro because you're like, oh, I get that he's like this hard ass, but he's also like, he's endearing in certain ways, and he kind of like just plays along with Luffy's bullshit. He's not afraid to be like, you're not a captain. Like even when he finds out that Luffy only has a boat and like no other crewmates, he kind of just laughs at him. He's like, all right, I guess we're going on the boat then. Like,
Like,
because
Zoro's
he's
gonna lose, man.
so he's a man of honor. Like, he's badass. He's He's an honorable man. He says, like, I made a promise. He understands Luffy has made a similar promise, like not like knowing, and he also can see past Luffy's like the surface like level of Luffy just being a goofy guy to being a badass. Like, that and no, Luffy is the leader. Like, he's like for like, that's I can follow this guy. And to say that you'll need to apologize to me, it's almost a sign of respect to say it's like, hey, if I need to do something like, if you're asking me to do something like, else, you're gonna have to apologize. Like later on, he's like, dude, I'm just letting you know like ahead of time, like, if something like this were to come along. So if they like see that in for later, and I think that's Luffy's the kind of character that would remember, even
Yeah,
though
like
like,
he would honor it.
he would
Yeah.
honor it, and he would know like when he if he ever had to do something like that, that he would know to apologize.
Yeah, I also love that the second there where he's like, "Yeah, our ship's out there." It just shows like a dog peeing on their ship. That's a great little gag. Also, this is another thing that I think highlights one of my. This is why Luffy is one of my favorite characters of all time. Not this moment in particular, but this trait that he has. Um, and that's when the Marines come in and they're with Colby. Colby is with Luffy and Zoro, who are revealed, obviously, to the whole town to be pirates. And Luffy knows what Kobe's ambition is. So he immediately finds a way to start a fight with Kobe, but not. Here's the thing, and this is what I wanted to pay attention to on the rewatch is, does Luffy throw the first punch at Kobe? And he doesn't. He doesn't start the fight by like, I hit you, then you hit me. He has he makes it so Colby starts the fight, so it looks like Colby is like actively aggressive towards Luffy and Zoro, therefore further creating a separation between him and them in the minds of the Marines who are there, thereby making it more easy for Colby to join them. You know,
Yeah,
if Luffy just is like, oh, he's not with us and punches him, then it's like, oh well,
sus. Yeah.
yeah, it's a little questionable, but it's so like, you know, you
It
can't like,
also is like almost a test to Colby, too, because it's like, I'm not going to throw the punch. You have to hit me.
Yeah, like how bad do you want
And
your dream?
exactly.
yeah,
And
it's exactly the right thing to do. It's like exactly like it lets Colby shine not only in front of the Marines but also in his own mind. Like I
mhm,
did the thing, but Colby also he also knows he's like, oh, Luffy
I
set
owe
this
it.
up.
Did
Like
you
Yeah,
I
think
I owe it to him.
yeah.
do you think Luffy was like, he's not gonna do it. He's a little coward. He's
No,
not
he
gonna do
knew.
it.
I
No, he
think he
knew.
knew.
Luffy knew, and that's sort of the thing is Luffy always has these kind of alternative, like, but brilliant ways of understanding what needs to be done in the situation. Sometimes without even knowing the full story. Like, he doesn't need to know the full story to know how to do the right thing, like to do like the specifically right thing. And that's
He knows Colby enough to where, okay, I know how to get like, like I know how to get Colby into like, the Navy. I know how to, how to make this happen for him. Like, and I know he's actually brave enough, even though if he like, it's like one of those things that if they made a plan, it wouldn't work. It needed to happen the way it
organically.
did for it to work out.
Do you think like the way because this is gonna be a running theme too, like Luffy will do this with multiple characters in the future as well. Like, do you think this is a direct reflection of his relationship with his mentor? Which they get
Um,
into like a little bit after, but like
yeah, we can go into because I mean, this is basically the next episode
Yeah,
is
we
seeing
can.
Shanks, which first of all, okay,
It's yeah. I want to talk about Shanks a
Shanks.
lot. Like
Shanks.
that's
Shanks. Oh, Shanks. Okay? Listen. Look at Shanks. See this guy?
what are you
One arm.
doing?
One arm.
It's
Three
no.
scars. Red hair.
I did not
1,000
remember
ass
that.
whoopings for anyone.
Justin,
Anyone who wants to come at
he's been
Shanks.
saying this nonstop all week
Shanks,
around the
dude.
house.
Shanks. Okay. You will soon understand. Well, maybe not soon, but soon enough, you'll understand that, and you understand even from this episode, when Shanks tells you no, it's no. When Shanks tells you to go home, you go. Shanks is like when your mom comes in and she's like, you're playing video games, and she's like, it's dinner time, and you're like, oh, I'll be there, and she's like, no, it's fucking dinner time, and
Did you
that's
hear
when
what
you
I said before? That's
and that's when you're like,
I
oh
won't say
no,
it again.
this is mom said, mom's, and so when Shanks comes in, it doesn't matter who you are. If Shanks said, Shanks said. So
it's
I love to see
it's
some Shanks. Love the first. So this is what I was going to say actually earlier.
mhm.
Is this is the first chapter in the manga. It actually starts with a flashback, which I think is like
Oh,
the
no
reason.
kidding.
Yeah, which I think was like a bold choice on Oda's part to literally start your whole series with a flashback of the main character. Um, and it actually the first thing that happens in the anime and in the manga that doesn't happen in the anime, and I think I understand why this didn't happen as well, is the first thing that happens is Luffy stabs himself in the face.
Whoa.
He
In the
takes a
manga?
knife. Yeah, in the manga, he stabs himself in the face with a knife to prove to Shanks how tough he is, and that's why he has that scar under his eye as an adult. Yeah.
Whoa.
Oh, no
It's
kidding.
That's
yeah, it's because he
wild.
stabs himself in the face with this knife, and it's because he's trying to prove to Shanks that he could be a real pirate. Um, and this sort
What's
of fits. Sorry, go ahead.
no. I was gonna say, like, I find that very, I think that's very interesting because that's almost more traditional to have the flashback first, because then when you see Luffy again, you would know he's the main character. Like, where
That's
what we
true.
were talking about before.
True. Sorry.
Um, and having it set up like this, it's more introduction to the world first, and then you understand Luffy
Well,
a tiny
you
bit
get
more.
the introduction. You still get the same Goldie Roger introduction.
Yeah, no.
But
I'm just
I
with
actually
the
think if you read the manga, the first chapter of the manga, um, I think it's also like, yeah, Luffy is kind of set up to be the main character, but you could also easily think that Shanks is going to be the main character from the way the manga kind of like portrays him. But yeah, so you get Shanks, who I won't say anything more about Shanks like beyond my like little rant
I'll
earlier, but
I'll
I love
say
I love Shanks.
I'll talk about Shanks and how much
Talk
he
about
sucks,
tell
because
tell them about
as
Shanks.
the newbie, Shanks automatically my fucking favorite character.
Tell
He's
them.
so
Tell them.
cool. First
Justin,
off,
tell
they
them.
they introduce him like almost as same way almost they do Luffy, where he's kind of like, aloof, like, or he's kind of like, he's just a happy guy. He's like a cool guy. You want to be on his crew. Everybody there in that bar is having a fucking blast, and it's because Shanks is their captain. And when the
Fucking needs
bandits
the party,
come,
dude.
and they like, they're picking a fight, like, they're trying to pick a fight with Shanks, but Shanks is like, it's not a big fucking deal, man. Like, it's
But
beer. Like,
it
we'll clean
also
it up.
yeah, but I also love that that this also gives portrayal to Shanks like his power scaling almost, because this would be like the way Shanks like gets like spit on with the beer or whatever, and they pour beer all over him and everyone
Hmm.
just laughs at it as he walks away. He doesn't pick the fight. Um and Luffy is really upset because he's like, because Luffy's
You're
thinking
looking
that
like
they're
an
like,
idiot. Yeah.
yeah, it made you look like an idiot. But in Shank's mind, like this is the way like you and your friends would laugh if like, if Jacob comes and like spills a whole beer on me and is mad, it's funny, right? Because Jacob's not, well, Jacob probably could beat me up, but when little kid does,
Jacob, for listeners, Jacob is my son. He's 1.5 years old, but
I
he
could
would spill
definitely
beer
kick
all
my ass.
over Lewis
Yeah.
or Lewis and Bill on purpose.
Get us
Um,
both.
but we would laugh about it because it's not like a serious threat. And this is sort of like how Shanks, like this bandit who's like worth 8 million berries, which is the currency in the One Piece world. He's worth 8 million, comes and he like has his little shit fit and throws beer all over Shanks, and they're just like, dude, that was hilarious, wasn't it? Like the second he walks out.
Yeah,
That would be Luffy in the situation being like, Bill, you can't let Jacob get away with that, man. He's gonna do it again.
No, and that's the first thing, like the first time I noticed what I was talking about, this like this idea of like the passivity of all the characters, like that I really found interesting, and like I really identified with. It's no, we don't need to fight him. Like, why would we need to fight him? What is there to get from fighting this guy right now? It doesn't help. The only thing that happens is that we're fighting.
It's just
Like,
an ego.
and
Yeah, like
yeah,
only
it's an
if you
ego
feel
thing.
like yeah.
It's and all three of the, like so far, all of the characters that we have talked about do not have do not have an ego. Like they have no ego about them in that sense.
Yeah.
Like,
Well,
between Hmm?
Zoro's honor is important to him, but it's not. It's
but it's not
about
his
like
ego.
yeah, it's about him as a swordsman more than it is about like I'm Zoro, I'm the shit. It's about like about honor and it's not. Yeah, I get what you're saying. It's not just like flaunting or
It's well, it's the same thing that Zoro was doing in the bar with in his during his introduction when you know Zoro could have killed everybody in the bar.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
he'd have just like, tore up everything, but he didn't,
I think that,
because he didn't have to, like,
yeah,
and
the
and
ego
it's
aspect of this is like what they talk about too is like, oh, we do this because we're pirates. Like this is what a pirate does, like a pirate fights.
yeah, they
But
fight. And if we're gonna fight, like if you want to fight, let's fight. But I don't need to fight. Like it's not a most. That's not my whole thing, or it's not like the most important thing to me.
they're civilized pirates.
Yeah, I know that's, but no, I love that. Oh man, fucking, it's like I could talk about Shanks all day. It was that, like, and you see the flip with Luffy, and you understand how Luffy has a similar personality that way too, when he becomes like, super powered up, and like, but then you also understand immediately how much Luffy means to Shanks as soon as Luffy eats that fruit, like, when nobody's paying attention. And he's like,
Yeah,
"You idiot!
And it's
Why
really
did you
stupid.
do that?" Yeah, like it was like he was so concerned, not because of the value of the fruit or anything like that, but because it was his friend. And he's like, "No, like that was a mistake. What you just did was
yeah, you're
like a
gonna be a
mistake. I'm
pirate. You
looking
can't
after
just
for you."
win, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah,
Which is also just like a fun like Oda writing like this story is about about pirates, a lot of whom can't swim. Like
Oh shit! You know what I just realized too, which we get it in these episodes. This isn't the first time Shanks has had a friend get lost to the devil fruit.
no, that's it. Yeah, we see it
oh
with a
yeah, yeah,
Buggy
it
later.
echoes why he is with Buggy, yeah, for sure. Which I didn't even think about, but there's all these little connections with every single thing, and they're not necessarily direct.
It's
Um,
and with after the the whole fight, or like the whole kerfuffle with Luffy and the bandit. Does the bandit have a name?
um, yeah, I
He
can't remember
does.
that.
I don't remember where he's just like, I've got an 8 million
Yeah,
buried bounty. And then the more you watch, the more you realize he's a bitch.
but yeah,
Mhm, yeah,
after like he's escaping and he takes Luffy with him, and after the fucking sea dragon is almost gonna like kill Luffy. Hey, I don't know how Shanks got there, but he fucking got there. And the idea of like Luffy crying and saying like but your arm, and he goes, it's just an arm. Like,
Like it's
I need to
nothing.
make sure you're okay. Like,
What's
it's
crazy too. Oh, sorry, I don't mean to cut
no.
you off.
Like, you go.
Like the idea of like at this point too, we've seen what people with eating the devil fruits, like they become more powerful. They've got like this crazy immense power that becomes of them. And then you've got Shanks who defeats this giant sea creature, literally looks it in the eyes and says like, "We're done," and it
so
leaves.
exactly what I was saying. When Shanks tells you no,
Yeah,
it's no. You go
no,
home. I'm telling you, sea monster, get the fuck on. Go home.
realization happens that Shanks is in the water with one arm holding Luffy, and you're like, oh fuck, he doesn't have devil fruit powers. Like this guy's just a badass. Like he's just this powerful as is.
Yeah, which it's interesting how they tell you that without telling you that, you know? It's like, oh yeah, Shanks doesn't have a devil fruit power. I also want to point out you can also see the Disney influence on Oda here with the sea monster that comes up, and I have this pulled up
It's
in the Discord chat. It's based on the eel
Ursula's
from
eels.
Ursula's Eels. Yeah. Uh,
Pinocchio. Yeah.
And Alvida is sort of like an Ursula,
yeah, in a way.
like that. When you're talking about Disney influences before, that was what I was thinking of. I was like, yeah, no, she's like an Ursula almost, like with her
Yeah.
characterization.
Yeah, just like a Fran Dresser, you know?
Yeah, like a Fran Dresser. Yeah, exactly. Shanks then leaving and giving Luffy the hat is again and his whole crew. I guess we can go like a whole day. It's like, man, when you
Oh,
were
sick.
talking
Okay.
before
Yeah.
about there being a whole story, like other things are going on. It's like this show could have started 50 years ago with this crew and just caught up to what's going on. They had their own adventures, doing their own thing. You can see that all of those characters are 100% like already fleshed out.
Yeah. Other things I want to highlight here are when Shanks Higuma is the name of the bandit. When he
Okay.
arrives there and his goon pulls the gun on Shanks, Shanks says, "Put your life on it."
Yeah.
He's like, "Yeah, you just put your life on it." And he's like, "What are you talking about?" Like he's like, this gun, it's not a toy." And then like instantly, like there's no this I love this, like there's literally no expression of speed. There's no like warp sound, there's no running. Just like you turn and his guy like his like bigger dude with like on Shanks's crew with like the meat hanging out of his mouth just
Yeah.
point blank blast the guy in the head. And this is also one of the things that lets you know right away that this is not a kid story. He
No.
just fucking point blank blasts this dude in the head. Like you can look at these characters and it's like, oh yeah, the big goofy guy, he's always eating like a turkey leg or something.
We
Like,
made a Disney allegory earlier. But it's not that. There might be an
yeah,
influence there, but it's not that.
yeah, there's an influence, but this is not that kind of like story. Like, and
Yeah.
again, this is in the first few pages of the manga. It's just like this guy just shows up like instant speed, which I think is interesting. Like it's like no hesitation, but also like how fast is this character? This is a big guy that we're talking about here.
No, that's the experience. Like the similar thing with Shanks, like in the water. I was like, how fucking fast did Shanks get there? Where was he this whole that
Um,
nobody saw coming?
so the other thing is that Shanks loses his arm, and there's no like, how do we wish his arm back? With this, just like, I mean, and
Well,
this
I
is
wanted to
like
ask
these early
really
episodes.
quick,
Okay, good.
before we go, before we like leave it, like, what do you think Shanks's reasoning was to give Luffy his hat, or what would you say like at this time? Let's say
I
Lewis
have
says the
Yeah, without saying anything like
yeah.
saying without saying anything that I know about the series.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, him kind of passing on almost like not an ambition, because it's not like Shanks doesn't have his own ambition, but it's like passing on like a torch to this next generation a little bit. It's like him saying to Luffy like, "Oh, not just only that like I believe in you, but also like here's a little challenge." Sort of the same way that Luffy finds a way to challenge Kobe a little bit to like, do what he needs to do. This is Shanks like kind of prodding Luffy like, oh, well, if you're gonna be a big pirate, then you can give me my hat back once you get to the new world,
Yeah.
you know?
He says it means a lot to me, like
Yeah.
and that's I was wondering. I was like, so yeah, what's his obligation to Luffy besides maybe guilt about
Yeah.
getting him into that kind of
It's
That's,
situation?
Luffy's
that's
his
what I thought
friend, you
too.
know?
Hmm?
Well, like Luffy is, Shanks' friend, but I think guilt plays a huge part in it because, I mean, Shanks technically did lose an arm
Yeah,
because,
exactly. And that was another thing too. I was like,
Help
he
him get over
feels
his guilt. Yeah.
bad at Luffy, he feels almost
yeah,
upset that Luffy's upset about the arm. It's like I remember my cousin closed the door and my mom was coming out the same like side of the car and slammed her finger
Damn.
in there, and he started crying, but she was the one consoling him. She felt bad
Right.
about like that. Like it's almost like
Yeah.
that sort of thing where it's like, no, it's good. Like I like, trying to still make him feel better
Yeah.
about all of it.
Like to Luffy, that was probably the most traumatic thing that's happened in his life, and it caught like inadvertently, like he hurt the person he cared about. So he
Mhm.
gave him the hat to stop the guilt, but also be like, this doesn't mean you have to. You won't be a pirate. Like you can still do this. Like I believe in you. You know,
Mhm.
which makes that bond just like I feel like a little bit more closer between the two of them.
Oh yeah, that's and you can and again you see later like it harkens back to the way Luffy is like now, or like how he is throughout the shows. Is like he you see that he's prodding Kobe along. Like he has some of the same values as Shanks, but he's still his own character. Like he's still his own like guy. But yeah, no, it's I like Shanks, MV, Puck, and P right now, and he's got Cape. That was the
Absolutely.
other thing too.
Absolutely.
I noticed this Cape. I was like, oh, he's got a fat ass Cape. So you don't even gotta worry. Oda doesn't even have to worry about drawing a no armed guy.
Yeah, he can hide under the cave. Dude,
He can
it's
hide it under the cave.
Shanks
Thanks of everything.
is an amazing character. Anytime you see Shanks, absolute fucking pleasure of the highest magnitude. It is just, and I mean, again, I'm not going to say anything more about like what Shanks does or doesn't do, but man, whenever Shanks does something, you're just like, yes. It's just like anytime you get to see this character, yeah, just amazing, amazing character. Can't wait till we can say more about him.
Let's say more about him. Yeah,
Um,
that was I was really like this whole time waiting to talk about that episode because I had such a fucking blast with that one. That I was like,
because Lou saw me stand up 1,000 times, just go Shanks, yeah, get Shanks, motherfuckers! Like getting so excited. Yeah, because I love Shanks, dude, and you guys will
he's
too. You guys will too. Trust me.
no, I already want the Shanks tattoo. You could change my guy on the cover. It's a fucking Shanks.
Yeah.
It's me as Shanks.
Well, yeah, I want to move on to Orange Town, which
Okay,
I think this is a theme for, I think you can say to some level, the East Blue in general, like the whole saga. But they really start to highlight it here. Is these early arcs are about what do we treasure, and they use that word a lot. So like Luffy treasures his hat, you know.
that's my treasure. That's
Yeah, and so it's like a treasure to each person isn't necessarily like what it is to Buggy, where it's like, the box full of gold and crowns and all this other
not a
crap.
literal treasure.
Yeah. So this is about sort of starting that idea or that notion. Um,
That
and
the dog, the
Shushu,
and
Yeah,
Shushu,
Shushu.
which
and
is
his
which starts another thing with One Piece, which is there's a lot of endearing animal characters and times in which like an animal is their own character. That like the animals of One Piece are a very important thing. And Shushu is sort of, you know, he's this dog that has his own backstory, you know?
yeah, and it's a like character that doesn't speak, where you see the flashbacks to like his owner and him helping him like with all that stuff and them sharing that like piece of meat. I laughed when I saw that. I was like, it's pretty funny. uh, but also like the tragedy, like him having to guard this like pet store, like was it a pet store he was
Yeah.
guarding?
It was a
Okay,
food store, yeah.
yeah. So I thought that was so. I thought that like just him, what like he was so interesting. Also, I noticed that back in the Shanks's town, like the episode that Shanks is in, the mayor of that town, and then the mayor of this town too. Like the mayors in these cities,
Yeah,
they
they
are
all
very
like mirror.
involved.
Because they're part of the actual world. I mean, you'll see that the politics of every given island is
Is a little bit
relevant.
different.
Yeah, and is normally relevant to the plot in some way.
Mm-hmm. But if we want to go back to a little bit, like the introduction to Captain Buggy, like
Vicento!
Yeah.
Well, I just want to first of all, you get that shot of Buggy like chilling in the chair, like
Mhm.
that opening panel, like I love that where he's just like swagged out, like he has like he looks like a pirate. He has like the striped shirts and like the big cape and the big hat. Um, and I also love that you can see Oda's love for Star Wars a little bit here when you don't see that Buggy has the chop fruit just yet, but you do see him choking a guy without moving his hand, like without moving his arms.
Yeah.
And
And
that's like
that's what, and I was wondering when I first like was watching, I was like, so does he have like psychic powers, like telekinesis? I don't remember that.
I think he's doing the Darth Vader on him, like
He's doing the force choke, yeah.
Um, and I also love, we get the moment where Luffy's in the cage, which happens pretty early on, and Nami's sort of like trying to like talk.
But this is also Nami's introduction arc, basically, like her almost her
It's like a
proper
named
one.
character. Yeah,
Yeah,
Because so
and
far we've just seen her in the background just swiping every little
stealing
thing.
stuff.
yeah,
Yeah,
Which is great.
um,
I absolutely
I
love
was
that.
thinking, I was like, the only real pirate I think so far is Nami. She's
No,
the only one doing
Yeah.
pirate
dressed
stuff.
as a pirate. She disguises herself as a pirate.
but yeah, we see like uh, she's trying to like pretend to join forces with Buggy. Boogie's like, okay, well then shoot that guy with the cannonball. And she's like, oh no, I don't know, I don't really want, it's not like that big of a deal. He's already in the cage, and he's like, no, you're gonna shoot him with the cannonball. Like, it's like it shows you like, oh, like this is like a merciless guy, like, and also this is like a thing that we'll see, that a lot of these like some of these pirate captains, like the way that you show loyalty is no, you're going to kill for me, and you're going to kill your ex-captain, or you're going to prove, like almost like joining like a gang or something, like you're going to prove your loyalty to me by killing someone and doing something that I think that you might not want to do, like pushing you to like kind of this other level.
And again, it's like, again, I see this thing with ego where it's just like being the most fabulous, or like that's the phrase he uses, right? The like
Flashy.
flashy, yeah, the flashiest. Like it's you're doing this for me. Like this is like you have to do, like it's not enough to say that you're gonna do. You have to
Do the things for me that I
you
tell
have
you
to
to
do
do.
the things for me, because I like because again the ego is just so big.
And Luffy
It's almost
doesn't
more
flinch.
important.
Luffy like doesn't have any. He has no qualms with getting shot at by the.
Oh no, he doesn't have a
He
problem
says,
with it. That's,
and he tells Nami, he's like, "This is what happens when you take on pirates with a half-ass resolve," is what he says.
yeah.
Tell her
You-
ass.
Yeah, he's like, you came to this without like just like wishy-washy thinking you can just be clever and talk your way out of these things. But this is what the world of pirates is whoever has the least resolve gets stepped on. And it's a really early like opening of that theme, which is one that we'll see later in some of my favorite arcs. Actually, it's like that's a big thing about like having resolve as a pirate.
No, that I see that also. Also, so Bill Lewis, give me a rundown a little bit, like a little cheat sheet on Luffy's powers, with like without getting in like super spoilers or whatever. How come he can't get out of that cage?
This is a questionable.
Yeah,
Yeah, theoretically he might be able to be just yanked out of there.
or could he be
This
able
is
to like stretch the gum fruit? Couldn't he just like stretch his head through like in X-Men when the
100% can, because there's even like that one insert shot of just I just registered what you said where the guy like turns into a water.
yeah, it's like he's made out of liquid or something like that. It is.
They have that like insert shot of Luffy like stretching his arm around just trying to get like a plate of fruit.
Yeah, And that's what I also noticed. They even like address it almost like directly.
It shows that I guess he can't fit his torso through those bars, even though the way they're illustrated, the bars are far enough. But that's maybe just you could write that off as like them illustrating in a way that you can actually see the Luffy's in there.
Luffy in there, yeah. Just
I think he can do it, and I'm putting this into my theory of the drunken master style, where he's acting like a fool or even acting like he's in distress. Because like at this point, I think already in his head he wants Nami to be part of his crew, and she's already put herself in a position where he's even pointed out to her like, "You came into this half-ass. Like, let's see where this goes." Like I feel like Luffy could get out of that. He could easily even just do his expandable like gum gum balloon and just break out of it, but he won't.
probably pop it or whatever. Yeah, it's like if we were getting like into the nitty gritty, and more if it's maybe more it's more of a test for Nami, like to test her resolve.
So you've got the flip side, which you'll see is he gets stuck. He always gets stuck into something.
Find some way to get stuck somehow all the time.
Yeah, he knows he's gonna get out. He just doesn't know when. Like he's just.
Oh
when
man,
is he gonna?
that's a philosophy I use in my life a lot.
Oh yeah, and that's a good philosophy to have because some people just get so panicked on being stuck. It's just when you should just tell yourself, hey, that's I'm gonna get out. Don't worry about it.
What would Luffy do?
Yeah, WWLD
all day. We also get the reveal of later in this episode of the chop chop fruit, which I think is an interesting parallel to Luffy's fruit, where Luffy can't be damaged by impact, and we get that Buggy can't be damaged by slicing. And this also brings up sort of like an interesting thing with One Piece and like the battles in One Piece is characters that have devil fruits. Some of them are sort of natural enemies to other characters. So it's not like a Dragon Ball Z kind of battle.
You're saying you're with the other Saiyans?
Yeah, well, it's like which has the higher power level isn't always the most relevant because Zoro is definitely stronger than Buggy, but his method of attack, Buggy is like immune to. And so this makes it a more dynamic sort of battle system. And not that I think that battles are the ultimate like part of One Piece, but they're definitely a part of One Piece, and they're made more dynamic by the idea that like some of these characters, specifically Devil Fruit users, have sort of natural abilities that either make them immune or make them a good pairing or a bad pairing against a certain other type of either Devil Fruit power or weapon or strategy of fighting.
Exactly. And basically, like between Luffy and Buggy, it's almost what is it, like a zero-sum game? I guess that's the phrase. So I'm gonna say it's like, one kind of outdoes the other, and you kind of can't affect me, I can't kind of affect you, and it kind of goes in a circle for a while because they're like basically counter punching or counter blocking each other's punch for like a very long time because there's not a clear winner, as like what you're talking about Zoro, where he that he just isn't effective. He's not an effective fighter against him. The matchup isn't there.
You know who I think is really relatable in this arc?
The mayor?
No, the crewmates pretending to be dead. Like,
no, that's who I am.
That would be probably all three of us at that point. Just they haven't noticed us yet. Just pretend to be dead.
Just pretend to be dead. Just chill.
No, Bill be on fucking Shanks' crew. He'd be hanging out on Shanks' crew.
And he's telling everybody like, look at him, red hair, one eye,
he'd be his hype man.
10,000 ass whoopings for anyone who wants to talk.
Oh,
don't worry, he don't got an ego. I got an ego I got his ego right here.
Yeah, so then we get, Zoro takes the cage and whatever. that's sort of actually we're kind of like jumbling the timeline, but that's not the most important
Yeah,
thing.
that's fine.
Um,
We can do that.
we get Zoro versus Kabaji, the unicycle guy. And I love that this already illustrates how Zoro's kind of like a glutton for punishment. He lets himself get stabbed in the wound that he already is like where he's already been stabbed.
Yeah.
And he's like, there, you got out of your system. Like, I'm still gonna kick your ass. Like, which gives Zoro a lot of portrayal too. It's like, yeah, Zoro wounded, like he'll just push through it. He's not going to nurse the wound. It's not like, oh, Zoro was wounded, so he's out of the fight. It's like, no, Zoro will just hurt himself worse. Like, and he's just going to grit his teeth through it. That's just the kind of character that Zoro is.
And what a way to kind of turn the like what the what's his name? The unicycle, the
Kabaji.
acrobatic Raji. The turn
Kabaji.
Raji's his strategy against him. Like
Yeah.
because he was like, "Oh, you're wounded," like, and he's trying to exploit the wound. And then by Zoro just, yeah, like you said, just letting him stab him. He's like, "There, are you done?" Like, it's, yeah, you're not like, it's once you do that, it's kind of like you can't do anything else.
Yeah, you've
It's
lost all
I
control.
let you do everything, like that thing you wanted to do, so, and it's not gonna beat me. And so what do you want to do next?
Which is so scary.
It's terrifying. It's absolutely terrifying as a as a as a trait, as a character piece. Are we gonna skip over the monster tamer guy?
Well,
Oh,
what I wanted to say about Richie and what's the other guy's name?
Richie.
Richie and Moji, is when we see them fight Shushu, it gives you understand that Oda's not afraid of being like letting a character be cruel to a character that he's endeared us to. Uh, Almost to like as a way of further illustrating just how evil or how unlikable X, Y, and Z character is. Um, and that's pretty much, I like Richie and Moji, but that's pretty much all I have to say about them. I just love those designs though. This is also like a unique like, how many like anime villains like would look like this? It's like, a goofy lion tamer that has like he dresses up like a lion and has like stubble and stuff and like looks, kind
Except
of
it
goofy.
looks more like if the Charmin bear came to life.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
no, oh my gosh! Speaking of which, when the Buggy's crew is all hanging out, and there's one person that takes a big bite of something, and it looks like the
It goes
cat,
into their
like
head.
that's on the top of his head. Yeah, that was. I love that part. That was one of my favorite parts.
This is also the fight with Zoro and Kabaji is the first time that we see Zoro use onigiri, which is
Mhm.
a pun. Onigiri is like a rice ball.
Mhm.
But the way Zoro says it, he says onigiri, which means demon slash. Oni being demon, giri I think roughly translates to cut or slash. Um, and so it's like this is like an example of the kind of puns that are in One Piece where it's like it's onigiri, which is a rice ball, but it's also a demon cut. So, um, and
Which
this is one of Zoro's like signature attacks. So
yeah, that was pretty cool. That's he just bosses him like right away.
we get the
Um,
flashback with Shanks,
Shanks and Buggy.
and
oh yeah, I forgot.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for bringing that up.
and
We find out they're comrades.
let's take important note here. Shanks with no scars.
Oh.
He
Ah,
doesn't have the 3 scars on his face.
No scars. Red hair. Less than 1,000 ass
Yeah,
whoopings.
exactly, but not for long. Um,
as I enjoy again when I saw Shanks again, I was like, look at Shanks again.
Hell yeah, dude.
It
Hell
was
yeah.
like it was like 2 episodes later, and I was like, man, I was still coming down off of Shanks, and I was like, oh, yeah, and you see him again? Ain't he fucking cool again? What's colder, North Pole or the South Pole? Who cares?
Whichever one
Whatever.
Shanks said, that's the one that's colder. That's the right answer. Whatever Shanks said, that's the right pole. That's the colder one.
I also thought that was so fun. It's like again, and it also makes him more endearing that you're like, no, this is back in the day when he was like we saw him when he wouldn't get in a fight, like when somebody poured like crap over his head. But it was like when he gets in an argument over the culture of the North Pole and South Pole.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
Which is also just like such a funny like pun in and of itself, which is like this is how like I love that One Piece will deliver the puns to you like super quick like that. It's like, they're not belaboring the joke. It's like there's just like a joke kind of written into a lot of these
yeah.
little character moments.
And I found that very endearing. I found it even made Buggy a lot more
Oh, for
like gave
sure.
him a lot more depth as a
Yeah.
character.
Genuinely love Buggy as a character too.
I like
Like,
Buggy a lot. And we'll see more of Buggy, of course.
But yeah, the kind of wraps up. Do we want to talk about our new crewmate, the navigator Navi?
well,
Swan.
technically not the navigator yet,
Yeah.
according to her words when she says, "I won't join your crew, but I will join you guys." It's like,
It's very advantageous.
yeah, I do like that she even commandeers her own ship from one of Buggy's crewmates.
Oh
Um,
yeah, it still
that's-
has the buggy flag on it.
yeah, just to make sure that they are aware that she is not a pirate yet. Nami's got one of my favorite arcs, so I'm looking forward to that coming up relatively soon.
So actually, yeah, let's talk about what the next arc or what not the next arc is, but the next episodes that we'll be covering for the podcast for the listeners who are watching along with us.
I think,
the
Bill, we're forgetting something.
Tell me.
Bill, do you want to tell everybody what your very, very, very of the week is?
I guess for this one, I just want to do, this is the very, very, very first. And so I want to cover our, very, very first impressions. After these 8 episodes, I know that you all have seen these before, but like coming back to it with fresh eyes, because I know, Lou, you didn't rewatch these episodes when you started watching again recently. You're coming back to this almost like, and I know that you were catching things this time that like you realize have relevance later. Yeah, so the very, very, very of the week is the very, very first impression. Coming at this again, what's the first impression of like where the series is going and what's going to be important and which characters are going to go where?
Well, I'll say that my very, very, very first impression is that I enjoyed this much more the second time around probably than I did when we first watched it. I don't know what it is. Maybe it was my ADD or something along those lines, but I caught so many other things that I really, really, really liked this time around. I love yeah, I think Luffy's great character. I fucking can't get enough of Shanks. Like, that's almost but I know it's one of those things. It's like dessert. You can't have, dessert like, as the whole meal. He's got to be a prize. I get
He
a treat.
absolutely
I
is.
get a treat.
And when you get those moments, these are the kind of moments which for me personally, there are a lot of in One Piece, but these are the kind of moments that when you get a Shanks moment, you get up out of the chair and you're like, when I'm at Lee, who's my partner for the listeners, when I'm at Lee's place, I'll normally read One Piece on in the morning when it comes out, and she can always tell when I'm reading it and when something like when a character that I haven't seen in a long time shows up or like when something amazing happens, because I'll just like I can't help myself. I'll like gasp. And so like yeah, when you get a Shanks moment, you're like it's the kind of, and One Piece is so good about like building it up with the right time, like the right time where it's relevant for a character to show up, but also not overdoing it to where it's like, oh yeah, any character just shows up willy-nilly any old time. And the other thing is that there's so many great characters in this series that they can be spread out, but you can still be pretty regular.
You're ready for the next, like the next one is kind of almost filling that.
Yeah, or you get introduced to a character that you've heard their name, but you don't know who they are. But and you're like, who is this character? And then what I will say about One Piece again, without any spoilers, is One Piece has some of the best character introductions of all time. Where just like they'll name a character, 300, 400, 500 chapters or episodes before they reveal who that character is. And like this will be like a named character that has like, portrayal just through their name and like who knows their name and who says their name and like this name, this name, this name. And then like when you see the character, like they might introduce them in a way that's not obvious right away that that's the character, but then you get their like name, their name box, like the same way that like,
Mhm.
they call it an Oda box where like Zoro, when they first show Zoro, it'll be like, so it's unmistakable. This is Zoro. It's like,
Type
Zoro. Like,
the X-Men when Cyclops shows up, he has his own like almost font with his name on it that was like Cyclops or Wolverine. Yeah,
that lets you know that this is like the character.
that's the guy. That's
And you're like that, like, oh, like this is that character, like, or even like a character that you don't know who they are, but when you find out what their rank within an organization, whether it be part of a pirate's crew or part of a military organization, like you're like it gives them like this level of portrayal just because you like what other characters within those groups, you're like, oh wow, like they're on this level,
Now that I've watched like a third of the One Piece episodes and like going back to these, like starting back from one, especially hearing you, Bill, talk about like, oh man, Oda plants so many seeds to like all these things. Going in and seeing the attention to detail and the stuff that he's planted, like even just these first 8 episodes, to even things like I don't know if we mentioned it or not, but like a main character's father being in one of the flashbacks that you didn't even realize, or like even like Luffy's I talked about like there's this shading that happens under his eyes and like everything gets serious, and I
Yeah.
put that on par with the same way somebody says Goldie Rogers, you like shut the fuck up and just listen to what they have to say. It's like when you see that visual cue, you're like, oh shit, hold up. Like what's he about to say?
It's
Like
about to go down, yeah.
yeah.
And
it's
then
like
you
they even play with it where
could
it's like he does that, but then he'll say something funny, and you're like, you got me.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, something that sounds silly, but like I'm really like trying to pay attention to now that I'm rewatching, like up to like where I'm at and potentially like further.
eventually further, yeah.
Panda Man. I'm trying
Yeah.
to keep an eye out for Panda Man.
So Justin, you don't know who Panda Man is, and maybe some of the listeners don't. Maybe even some of the listeners who are current on One Piece might not know who Panda Man is. I know I didn't know who Panda Man is. My first 2 watch throughs, I didn't know about Panda Man. Panda Man is essentially a Where's Waldo kind of character. Anytime there is a crowd shot. So there's a lot of like shots of like unnamed crowds in One Piece, be they village people, members of pirate crews, like, sometimes you'll just get like a generic like view of a crowd. And if you look hard enough in some of those crowds, and I haven't noticed one yet, but I've been on the lookout for it, and sometimes just pausing the episode outright to kind of look around the screen, sometimes you'll see Panda Man, who is a character. He's a shirtless character with heart-shaped nipples and a panda face. And this is sort of like a Where's Waldo character that apparently has his own story. I'm not very familiar with it. But there's Panda Man and there's a detective who's out looking for Panda Man, who is also a character that you can find among.
I didn't know there's a detective.
Now you got me. This is like I didn't understand before, but now you're like, there's a detective catching him. All right, now you got my attention.
Well, here's the thing. I'm trying to do a Panda Man count, and so far in the last 8 episodes, I have not seen Panda Man or this detective because I wasn't even looking for that. But if any of you guys at home who are listening have spotted Panda Man or the detective, please let us know. I'm dying to see
Call
him.
into our 1-800 number. Send emails in. But we could promise you, listeners, that we are on the hunt. We will find Panda Man.
I have a feeling Panda Man is going to be the strongest character in One Piece.
He ends up being the One Piece.
He is the One Piece. He's just lounging over the treasure chest on the final island. And on the next episode of the very, very, very strongest One Piece podcast, we'll be covering the Syrup Village arc. which comprises episodes 9 through 18. So our homework is around 9